Hello. Tonight we travel back nearly 4,000 years to one of the most dazzling and dangerous cities in human history, Babylon. The air hums with heat and incense. The sky glows over bricks the colour of lapis lazuli. And somewhere beyond those colossal walls, the heartbeat of the ancient world thunders in dust and drums. You stand before the Ishtar Gate, watching lions, dragons and bulls parade across its glazed blue surface, each one a symbol of power and divine favour. But as you wipe sweat from your eyes, reality hits. This city isn't a museum piece. It's alive, loud, and unforgiving, and you probably won't survive this. So, before we begin, take a moment to like the video and subscribe if you'd like to hear more stories like this. And tell me where you're listening from and what time it is right now. Now, dim the lights, let a gentle breeze whisper, and we'll ease into tonight's journey. The gate looms before you, massive enough to swallow entire carts of grain and camel trains. Its blue glaze sparkles under the Mesopotamian sun, a strange beauty made of crushed minerals, copper dust, and sheer human labour. The lions stare down at you, as if judging your worthiness to enter. You shuffle forward with the crowd, traders, slaves, farmers, and priests, all coated in the same fine layer of dust. The smell is the first thing that truly overwhelms you. Sweat, dung, roasted dates, and fish from the Euphrates. There's a spice in the air, too crushed coriander, and something metallic. Maybe blood, maybe copper, maybe both. You clutch your tunic tighter, though it's already soaked. The man in front of you argues with a guard over a cart of barley. You catch the guard's accent Akkadian, and remember, not everyone here speaks the same tongue. Babylon may be the gate of the gods, but it's also a tangle of languages, debts, and tempers. A voice beside you, a woman selling amulets, murmurs something about Marduk's blessing. Her hands are stained blue from making beads, her eyes wary. You buy one just to avoid offending her. A small clay charm shaped like a lion's paw. She promises it will protect you from the city's eyes. You don't know what that means yet, but you will. The guards finally wave you through the Ishtar Gate, and the sound changes from shouting to a deep, continuous hum of life. The street ahead, the processional way, is paved with bricks that still hold the day's heat. Each footstep crunches dust into your sandals. Towering over everything is the ziggurat, Etemenanki, the foundation of heaven and earth. It rises like a stairway into the clouds, its shadow swallowing entire markets. Historians still argue whether that very tower inspired the later tale of Babel, where languages shattered and humanity was scattered. You walk on, following the sound of a drumbeat. Every few blocks, a clay tablet marks the name of a shop or temple. You can't read it, of course. The wedge-shaped cuneiform looks like tiny bird tracks pressed into stone. Only trained scribes can decipher it, and their skills are worth more than gold. Babylon runs on tablets, records of taxes, trades, marriages, even beer rations. If you want to exist here, you need your name pressed into clay. Right now, you're nobody. A young boy rushes past you, carrying a jug of water balanced on his head. It sloshes down his neck as he disappears into a side street where goats bleat and a potter hammers clay. The temperature climbs higher, easily past 40 degrees Celsius, and even the air feels ancient, heavy with centuries of breath. You pass a shrine to Ishtar herself, goddess of love and war. The contrast feels fitting, beauty and destruction, side by side. Offerings crowd the altar. Oil, dates, bits of lapis. A cat naps between them, indifferent to the divinity it guards. You toss a pebble into the offering bowl, because everyone else does, though you're not sure why. A man beside you mutters, "To skip her is bad luck." You don't plan on tempting any more bad luck. You're already dangerously close to heatstroke. A fringe fact most tourists never hear. Those shining blue bricks that dazzle under the sun. They were once mortared with bitumen, a tar-like pitch that oozes and smells faintly of oil. Some ancient builders even used crushed shells to make it shine. The scent still lingers faintly, like hot asphalt. As you wander deeper, the noise sharpens into rhythm, a mix of reed flutes, hammers, and human voices. You turn a corner and nearly collide with a priest carrying a goat by the horns. Its hooves scrape against the pavement, eyes wide, bleating toward the temple steps. The priest doesn't glance at you. Sacrifices are as common as greetings here. The gods must be fed. By midday, the light turns blinding. The walls radiate heat. You duck into a shadow between two buildings, where someone has set up a stall selling dates and beer. Babylonian beer isn't exactly refreshing. It's thick, cloudy, more like sour porridge. But it's safer than the river water, and you're parched enough not to care. You drink through a reed straw and instantly regret it. It tastes like fermented sadness. Nearby, a scribe is etching names onto clay tablets, his stylus tapping rhythmically. His client, a merchant, dictates prices for wool and copper. The scribe's fingers move fast, each wedge of clay a contract more binding than words. You watch, mesmerized these tablets will outlive both men. Some of them might even survive for thousands of years, ending up in museums where future generations will gawk and wonder who made them. And maybe if they're lucky, they'll never smell this city's streets. A sudden shout breaks your trance. A boy is caught trying to steal bread. The baker yells for a guard. People stop to watch, not out of cruelty, but habit. Justice here is public theatre. You hear murmurs. If he's lucky, he'll just get whipped. Hammurabi's code is no bedtime story. Eye for an eye isn't metaphorical, it's policy. Historians still debate whether the laws were enforced as strictly as written, but for you, that argument doesn't matter. The Guards Club does. You step away, blending into the crowd. The city pulses around you, magnificent, merciless, alive. Every wall seems to whisper how many have passed through these streets, how many never left. Babylon doesn't notice your awe or your fear. It simply continues, eternal and indifferent. By sunset, your legs ache, your throat burns, and your amulet feels heavy against your chest. You glance once more at the glowing ziggurat in the distance, its top catching the dying sun. You can almost believe the gods live there, watching through the haze. But as darkness creeps over the city, a different kind of noise rises, softer, secretive. Drums fade into murmurs. Fires flicker behind latticed windows. Somewhere, a dog howls. You've survived the first few hours. Barely. And as you sink onto a warm step beside the street, catching your breath under the weight of history, you can't shake the thought. This city has already seen your kind before the curious, the fragile, the unprepared, and it knows exactly how long you'll last. The next morning finds you already drenched in sweat, even before the sun clears the horizon. The air feels like a thick blanket soaked in mud and smoke. Babylon wakes early, or maybe it never really sleeps. The first thing you hear is the rasping sound of brooms sweeping clay dust from the processional way, and the shouts of traders staking their spots before the crowd swells. You stretch your sore legs and realize that the entire city has a rhythm, and you're the one tripping off beat. The markets are impossible to resist. Every turn pulls you towards some new scent-roasted fish, freshly baked flatbread, or the sharp tang of goat cheese drying in the heat. You'd think food would be comfort here, but it's more like a gamble. Flies swarm over figs and dates, and somewhere in the background a pig squeals. A merchant spots you and waves enthusiastically, shouting something in Akkadian that you definitely don't understand. You shake your head, but he thrusts a basket of barley cakes toward you anyway. You hand over a small copper coin from the handful you were given at the gate, and he sniffs it suspiciously, then bites it. Welcome to commerce, Babylon style. You bite into the barley cake. It's hard enough to qualify as a weapon, and the flavour falls somewhere between burnt cereal and desperation. Still, it's food. You're halfway through chewing when a cart wheel splashes through a puddle of mud, and something worse, the stuff that runs down from upper streets, where waste flows freely. It spatters your legs. You grimace. The merchant laughs. Hygiene here isn't a concern, it's an afterthought. You begin to realise that disease probably kills more people here than any sword. As you push deeper into the market, you see why ancient Babylon was the centre of the world. Traders from as far as Egypt, Elam, and the Indus Valley hawk their wares. Ivory combs, lapis necklaces, spices that smell like sunburnt forests. And behind every transaction lies a law. The Code of Hammurabi governs this chaos, nearly 300 carved rules dictating how much your mistake is worth in silver, blood, or body parts. You pause before a large stone stele standing near a temple wall. The top shows King Hammurabi receiving his laws from Shamash, the sun god. Below, the text ripples in perfect cuneiform rows. A man beside you explains proudly, "Our king made these so that even the strong obey." You nod politely, though you're pretty sure obey doesn't mean equal. The rules here are brutally specific. If a builder's house collapses and kills the owner's son, the builder's own son must die. If a noble slaps another noble, there's a fine. If a commoner slaps a noble, there's a funeral. Historians still argue whether these punishments were applied literally or more symbolically. But judging by the missing fingers you've seen, you're leaning toward literal. The sun rises higher, turning the clay streets to powder. Every breath feels like you're inhaling dust and heat. A guard strides past, his bronze helmet gleaming, eyes scanning for trouble. You quickly step aside, remembering the baker's boy from yesterday. Here, even bumping the wrong person could land you in front of a judge. And oh, the judges. Babylonian justice doesn't come with paperwork, it comes with witnesses, oaths, and the river. You overhear an argument between two merchants over a shipment of spoilt dates. The older one calls for a trial by water. You edge closer, curious. Apparently, if the accused leaps into the Euphrates and survives, the gods have judged him innocent. If he drowns, well, problem solved. The crowd nods approvingly. You can't help but glance toward the river and feel your stomach twist. A fringe tidbit. Babylonian courts also had tablet rooms, where scribes kept archives of verdicts, contracts, and complaints. It's one of the earliest examples of a bureaucratic filing system. You picture hundreds of dusty clay rectangles, stacked like bricks of human drama, theft, marriage, sorcery, who knows what else. Somewhere in there, maybe, is a tablet describing a foreigner who sneezed near someone's bread and caused a riot. Speaking of sneezing, it happens. The dust gets into your nose, and before you can stop yourself, you sneeze loudly near a stall selling flatbreads. The baker's eyes narrow. He mutters a curse, probably invoking Nergal, the god of disease. A few nearby shoppers back away. In this world, illness isn't just gross, it's spiritual. If you cough or sneeze in public, you risk more than disapproval. You risk being marked impure. The baker waves his hands and tells you to move on, scowling as if you've summoned demons into his dough. You do as told, fast. At the end of the street, you find a patch of shade near a water vendor. The vendor dips a long ladle into a clay jar and pours you a cup. You hesitate. The surface is covered with something that looks suspiciously like mosquito larvae, but thirst wins. The water tastes earthy, but at least it's cold. The vendor grins and tells you the source, the Euphrates itself. You manage a smile and mentally apologize to your stomach in advance. Around noon, temple bells clang deep, metallic, almost like gongs. The crowd briefly pauses. Some cross their arms and bow their heads. Others just keep selling. The sound seems to ripple through the streets like a heartbeat. Babylon isn't just a city, it's an organism. Everyone moves in rhythm, even the chaos feels choreographed. A boy runs past with a clay tablet pressed to his chest, yelling, "For the scribe! For the scribe!" You catch sight of wedge marks drying in the sun, another contract, maybe a debt or marriage agreement. Literacy here is rare and powerful. Scribes are the silent masters of Babylon, their styluses as sharp as swords. You wonder how many lives depend on those marks in clay. Then you hear shouting again. Two men are arguing over the price of fish. One accuses the other of watering down his catch to make it heavier. The accused swears by Marduk that he didn't. They go back and forth until a crowd forms, cheering like it's theatre. Finally, a guard steps in, grabs them both, and drags them toward the temple steps. Someone mutters, "They'll measure it against Hammurabi's law." You can't help but think in this city, fairness is a calculation, not a feeling. By the time the sun starts to dip, your body aches from walking and your mind from watching. You've seen more rules in a single day than most people ever memorize. There's a strange comfort in it, though. Everything here has a price, even survival. You pause at a quiet corner where a stray dog sleeps against a wall. The wall's bricks are carved faintly with old inscriptions, names of kings long dead. The dog twitches in its sleep, chasing something only it can see. For a moment, you envy it. It doesn't have to understand Hammurabi's laws. It just has to wake up tomorrow. By the time the sun bleeds into the horizon, Babylon glows like a kiln. The ziggurat catches fire with the last rays of daylight. The streets hum with heat, and every wall seems to exhale the day's exhaustion. You've been walking since morning, and now your feet feel like they've traded souls for sandpaper. All you want is a place to lie down, any corner, any cot, any patch of ground not crawling with something alive. Easier said than done. The main streets are still packed, but the faces have changed. The day's merchants fade away, replaced by musicians, beggars, and night hawkers. Lamps flicker in doorways, their flames fed by sesame oil. You pass a man squatting beside one, carving little clay idols and muttering charms for protection. "Bad night for strangers," he says without looking up. You nod, unsure if he means the thieves, the spirits, or both. Probably both. You duck into a narrow alley between two mud brick houses. The walls are close enough that you can touch both sides at once. The air here smells of wet clay, rot, and humanity. Someone is cooking something that might be fish or might be regret. Children dart past you barefoot, laughing, their hair matted with dust. You try to follow the sound of voices, hoping for an inn, but inn isn't really a Babylonian concept the way you know it. Travellers usually crash in temple courtyards or rent space on a roof, and that's if they can pay. You spot a courtyard surrounded by low mud walls. A woman is sitting near the entrance with a clay lamp beside her, counting coins. You ask if she rents space. She looks you over slowly, your sweat-streaked tunic, your empty hands and snorts. "Too late," she says. "Roof's full, unless you want to share with the goats." You glance inside. She's not kidding. A couple of goats chew quietly in the corner, and one stares at you like it's daring you to try. You decide to move on. Farther down the street, a group of men is spreading reed mats on the ground. Labourers, By the look of them, their hands calloused, their backs burned from the sun. One waves you over and grins. You pay a copper, you sleep here. You don't pay, you don't sleep. Simple math. You hand over one of your last coins. He points to a spot on the packed dirt, wedged between two others who are already half asleep. You lie down, using your rolled tunic as a pillow. The earth is still warm from the day, but it's better than standing. A moment of peace, then itch. Something skitters across your arm. You slap it away and immediately feel another bite on your leg. Fleas or lice, maybe both. You try not to think about it, but the night has other plans. Someone snores beside you, another coughs. Somewhere nearby, a baby cries, and a dog starts barking in answer. The city never really quiets, it just changes its tone. You shift onto your side, staring up at the narrow strip of sky between rooftops. Stars blink faintly through a haze of smoke and dust. You remember reading once that Babylonian astronomers were among the first to chart the constellations, that they tracked Jupiter and Mars with mathematical precision. Right now, you just wish one of them would invent bug spray. A sudden rustle breaks your thoughts. The man beside you jerks upright and shouts something. You sit up too, heart racing. A shadow darts past a thief, quick as a cat, clutching something that glints in the lamplight. The labourers leap to their feet and chase him down the street, shouting curses that probably make the gods blush. You stay seated, clutching your small pouch. Nothing's gone this time. You realise that in this city, even sleeping is a sport. Later, when the commotion dies down, you wander again, too restless to lie still. You pass another courtyard, this one lined with tiny clay lamps shaped like flowers. A woman sits inside grinding barley with a stone roller humming softly. She looks up when she sees you and shakes her head. No rooms. Try the temple, she says. You follow her advice. The temple is quieter, massive stone columns, flickering torches, the smell of incense thick in the air. A few travellers already lie curled along the outer walls. A priest passes by, his robe dragging on the floor. He doesn't stop you, just gives a weary nod. You find a spot near a column and sink down with relief. Finally, cool stone. It's the first real comfort you've felt all day. The hum of chants echoes faintly from deeper inside, priests reciting hymns to Marduk. The words rise and fall in a rhythm that almost lulls you to sleep. You let your eyes close, just for a moment, and then a voice cuts through the quiet. You, stranger! You look up. Another priest stands over you, frowning. This is sacred space, not a tavern floor. You stammer an apology, but he waves his hand impatiently. If you must sleep, offer something first. You check your pouch, 2 small copper coins left. You give him one. He studies it, nods, and moves on. You breathe out slowly. Welcome to the original paywall. A strange, fringe detail floats through your tired mind. Some Babylonian households placed small clay demons under their thresholds to ward off evil spirits. They were called apotropaic figures, and people believed they kept nightmares and sickness away. As you curl up against the temple wall, you wonder if you could use one right now. The stone floor cools your skin, but the air still clings to you like syrup. Outside, crickets chirp, or maybe that's just the sound of the city creaking in its sleep. Somewhere nearby, someone whispers a prayer. You can't make out the words, but it sounds desperate. Babylon at night feels older than time, older than language itself. Historians still argue whether ordinary Babylonians believed their gods truly watched them, or if worship had become just another civic duty, like paying taxes or cleaning the street before sunrise. But lying here, half awake, You can't help but feel something vast pressing in the weight of belief, the heat of thousands of lives stacked layer upon layer in this labyrinth of brick and dust. You drift in and out of uneasy sleep. Dreams flicker flashes of ziggurats, roaring lions, and rivers that whisper in dead tongues. You wake once to the sound of rain, a rare thing here, light and fleeting, just enough to turn the streets into a slick of mud. When dawn finally bleeds into the sky, you sit up stiff and sore, covered in dust and regret. Your coin pouch is lighter, someone must have helped themselves in the night. You can't even be angry. You just sigh, brush off your tunic, and stand. The city is already stirring again. Vendors shout, donkeys bray, and the smell of baking bread drifts through the alleys. You survive the night, but just barely. Home, in Babylon, isn't a place. It's an illusion, one you rent from the heat, the noise, and luck itself. Morning doesn't so much arrive in Babylon as it erupts. The sky is a pale wash of gold and dust, and the air already hums with the kind of heat that makes shadows vanish before breakfast. You drag yourself upright from the temple steps, brushing off bits of straw and clay, and join the slow, yawning tide of people flooding toward the streets. The smell of smoke and bread tells you exactly where to go toward food, if you can call it that. The first stall you find is run by a woman who looks like she's been awake since the dawn of civilization itself. Her hands move fast, slapping barley dough onto a hot clay griddle. The bread hisses, puffs, then collapses flat again. She serves it with a ladle of something grey and steaming. "Mash," she says, thrusting a bowl toward you. You hand over your last copper coin and stare down at breakfast. The mash is thick, lumpy, and smells faintly of goat. You take a cautious bite. It tastes like dust that went to culinary school. You chew anyway. It's surprisingly filling if you ignore the occasional crunch that you hope is grain and not grit. A fly lands on the edge of the bowl, bold as royalty. You wave it off too late. The fly wins this round. You look around at the others eating nearby. Men in linen skirts, women balancing clay jugs on their hips, children gnawing at crusts of bread. No one talks much. Mouths are too busy working through the morning meal. A dog lurks nearby, tail wagging optimistically, waiting for scraps. Someone tosses it a bone, and for a second you envy its simplicity. Nearby, a group of workers drinks from a large clay jar, dipping their cups into the same murky liquid. The water looks questionable, but thirst trumps hesitation. You step closer. One man gestures for you to join. You scoop a handful. It's cool but cloudy, and it smells faintly of riverweed. You take a sip. Muddy, metallic, definitely Euphrates vintage. You can almost feel your immune system filing for early retirement. A few drops trickle down your chin and onto your tunic. The worker grins. "Good water," he says proudly. "Came from the canal at dawn." You manage a nod, trying not to think about the fact that Babylon's canals double as sewers. Historians still argue whether the Babylonians truly understood waterborne disease, but you're starting to think ignorance might have been their greatest survival skill. A passing scribe stops to drink, then pours a small libation on the ground before sipping. You ask why, and he explains. For E, Lord of fresh waters. Without his blessing, the river dries. You glance toward the horizon where the Euphrates glimmers like molten bronze and think, "Please, Ea, bless this water twice." Breakfast continues around you in its own rhythm. Someone is selling figs from a basket, sticky and sweet. Another trader carries goat milk in sealed clay jars, sloshing slightly as he walks. You buy one with a tiny bronze ring you found near the temple. He doesn't even blink. You open it and take a tentative gulp. The milk is warm and tangy, closer to yogurt than anything else. It coats your mouth, and you grimace. Still, it's probably safer than the water. Probably. You find a shaded wall and sit. Across the street, a group of men unload sacks of grain from donkeys. They're laughing, calling out jokes in Akkadian, words you can't understand but somehow still recognize as universal morning grumbling. One trips over a loose cobblestone, spilling barley everywhere, and his friends howl with laughter. You chuckle too, and for a moment it almost feels like you belong. Then reality bites literally. Another flea. You slap your leg and sigh. Hygiene here is a team sport that no one seems to win. A woman nearby notices your frustration and smiles sympathetically. Oil, she says, showing you a small jar of sesame oil, keeps the bites away. You buy a dab for a crumb of bread and rub it on your arms. It smells nutty, almost pleasant, and for a few minutes the itching calms. As you watch her pack up her stool, you remember a curious historical fact. Babylonian recipes actually survive on clay tablets. Archaeologists have found some of the world's oldest cookbooks here, describing stews with meat, onions, garlic, and spices, though none of those seem to have made it to your bowl today. The average Babylonian breakfast was barley porridge, watered wine, or bread dipped in oil fuel, not pleasure. You're living that reality, one sticky mouthful at a time. A temple bell rings in the distance, and people glance up briefly before returning to their routines. Commerce, prayer, survival all blur together here. A man selling onions stops mid-shout to bow toward a passing priest. A boy runs errands with a basket of dates balanced on his head. Everyone has a place in this humming organism of a city. Everyone except you. You wander toward the canal for a better look. The smell hits first wet clay, reeds, and something sour that makes your stomach tighten. Workers scoop water into large jars, straining it through woven reeds. A dead fish floats lazily near the edge. You take a cautious step back. Nearby, two women scrub laundry against flat stones, chatting about a neighbour's new husband and his suspiciously fast wealth. Gossip, it seems, transcends time and geography. One of them laughs and says something about blessing the clothes. She pulls out a small jar and sprinkles what looks like powdered clay over the water. You ask about it, and she explains, it's natron, a natural soda used for cleaning. You nod, impressed. Ancient science meets stubborn filth. It half works. A fringe tidbit. Wealthy Babylonians sometimes perfumed their drinking water with herbs, mint, anise, even crushed petals, both to mask the taste and, they believed, to ward off sickness. The poor had no such luxury. They drank straight from the canal, trusting the gods and their guts to sort it out. You take another sip from your jar and wonder if you just shortened your life expectancy by a decade. The sun climbs higher and the air thickens. You find a quiet corner near a clay bakery wall, still warm, comforting in a strange way, and rest your head. Your stomach grumbles. The barley mash is sitting heavy, but at least it's sitting. A priest walks by with a tray of incense sticks, muttering blessings for the harvest. Smoke curls through the morning air, mingling with the scent of bread and sweat. You can't help smiling at the absurdity of it, humanity's first civilization dazzling in architecture and math. And yet half the city starts its day eating porridge and praying their water doesn't kill them. Progress, it seems, is uneven. You close your eyes for a moment, just listening, footsteps in dust, donkeys braying, the splash of water, the clink of cups. Life in Babylon hums like a living heartbeat, brutal, loud, and utterly indifferent, but undeniably alive. By mid-morning, The city has transformed into a furnace. The blue tiles of the Ishtar Gate shimmer like molten glass, and the streets radiate heat that feels personal. Somewhere, a priest chants praises to Shamash, the sun god, but right now, you're not feeling particularly devotional toward him. Babylon wakes up early, and by now everyone has already been swallowed by work. You're not quite sure what your job is supposed to be yet, but the options are clear enough: work or be worked. There's no unemployment line here, just sweat or starvation. You follow the sound of rhythmic thudding to a construction site near the outer wall. Dozens of men haul wet clay in wicker baskets, dumping it into moulds while overseers bark orders. The smell of mud, sweat and straw hits you in a wave. You're watching the machine that built civilization, one aching back at a time. "Hey, stranger!" someone shouts. A man with arms like braided rope tosses you a half-empty jug of water. "You want pay? Grab a basket." You hesitate, glance at the overseer, a lean man with a whip looped casually around his shoulder. His eyes flick over you once, calculating. Then he shrugs. "Fine. Half ration if you last till noon." That's the ancient job interview process. You're hired. The work is exactly what it sounds like. Endless scooping, carrying, pouring, smoothing. The clay sticks to your hands and legs, and soon your sandals are useless, caked with mud. The sun feels like a punishment handed down by the gods themselves. You try to keep pace with the others. They move like a single organism. One man shovels, another carries, a third pats the mould, flat with rhythmic slaps. The sound becomes hypnotic. Slap, scoop, grunt, slap. Civilization has a beat, and it's exhausting. "Don't drop it!" the overseer shouts, and someone nearby flinches. Too late. A basket slips, spilling a load of wet clay across the ground. The whip cracks before you even realize it's moved. The man staggers, shoulders tense, then silently bends to scoop the clay again. No argument, just obedience. You look away, heart hammering. In Hammurabi's Babylon, labor isn't just work, it's law. The famous code spells out every detail: how much a worker earns, how to compensate for injuries, even how to punish laziness. You remember one: if a builder constructs a house and it collapses, killing the owner's son, the builder's son shall be put to death. Justice by symmetry, a horrifying sort of fairness. "Keep moving," someone snaps beside you, breaking your thoughts. You shoulder another basket and trudge to the wall. A scribe sits nearby, tallying deliveries on a clay tablet with a stylus. The symbols look elegant, but his job is just as repetitive. Every load, every worker, every missed shift is recorded. Babylon doesn't forget. A few women pass carrying jugs, their hair tied back with linen strips. They're headed to the temple kitchens. You're told grinding grain for offerings and bread. You catch sight of one pounding flour with a stone pestle, her movements steady and strong. "Better this than hauling bricks," she mutters when she sees you watching. But not by much. By mid-morning, your muscles are trembling. You stop for a breath, leaning on the wall, and the rope-armed man from before grins at you. "First day's always the worst," he says, handing you a bit of dried date. "Eat. Keeps the sun from killing you." You chew, grateful. The date tastes like sweet sand, but it's something. Nearby, a priest in white robes blesses the construction site with a handful of incense and a murmured prayer to Marduk. "May your hands serve the god's purpose," he intones. You resist the urge to ask whether the gods will also provide shade. A donkey brays somewhere behind you, dragging a sled piled with bricks. The handler, a boy no older than 12, flicks its flank with a reed stick. His small body moves with surprising precision. He's done this his whole life. In Babylon, childhood ends before it begins. By noon, your skin burns, your throat feels like sandpaper, and the sun has turned everything into an oven. The overseer calls a break mostly because the workers would start dropping otherwise. You all huddle under the meagre shadow of the wall, sharing a communal jar of water. It tastes like clay and salvation. Someone cracks a joke about the king building another ziggurat, so he can climb high enough to shout at the gods. Laughter ripples through the group, dry and hoarse. Even misery needs humour. A man with a scarred face leans toward you. You knew? You nod. Then, listen. If anyone offers you work for the temple, take it. Food's better, shade's better. Just don't anger the priests. You ask what happens if you do. He taps his throat and smiles thinly. The gods hear everything. The break ends too soon. Back to hauling, mixing, sweating. You lose track of time, minutes blend into hours. Occasionally, a gust of wind sweeps through, kicking up dust that sticks to your wet skin. Your entire body becomes the colour of Babylonian clay. You start to notice the rhythm again. The slap of mud, the scrape of sandals, the sharp calls of overseers echoing between walls. The city moves like a living machine, beautiful from afar, brutal up close. And you realise something. The wonders of ancient Mesopotamia weren't built by gods or kings, but by people like these sunburned, nameless, tired beyond words. Finally, as the sun tips westward, a horn sounds quitting time. The workers sag in relief. The overseer counts heads, then distributes barley tokens, small clay coins used to buy rations later. Yours feels heavy in your palm, more symbol than payment. You survived the day, barely. The rope-armed man claps your shoulder. You did well, he says. Tomorrow you'll hurt worse. You laugh weakly. And the day after? He grins. You stop feeling it. That's when you belong. As you leave the site, dragging your feet through dust that glows red in the fading sun, you glance back at the rising wall, hundreds of hands shaping eternity, one brick at a time. The work may be endless, the whip always waiting, but somewhere inside that exhaustion lies the heartbeat of a city that refused to die. And as night falls, you realize, in Babylon, survival is worship. By the time you stagger away from the work site, your shoulders ache, your feet throb, and your throat feels like the inside of a kiln. The city hums around you, merchants shouting, donkeys braying, potters hammering their wheels. But above it all, one sound cuts through everything. The steady, resonant beating of drums from the temple district. You follow it almost without thinking, drawn like a moth to the promise of shade or perhaps divine mercy. The great ziggurat of Babylon rises ahead of you, a stairway to the heavens built from millions of baked bricks. Its summit glows gold under the dying light, and you can almost believe it touches the sky. The air smells of incense and dust. Pilgrims shuffle forward in lines, clutching offerings, jars of beer, handfuls of grain, small clay figurines shaped like animals or gods. You fall in step behind them, trying not to look too lost. Maybe, you think, a prayer or two can earn you some cosmic protection. At the base of the temple steps, a priest in linen robes raises a hand. His head is shaven, his expression unreadable. For Marduk, he intones, as if addressing everyone and no one. You fumble for something to offer, but your hands are empty except for a small barley token. The priest's eyes flick to it, then to you, and his mouth twitches, half pity, half dismissal. The gods accept what they are owed, he says. You mutter something about being new in town, but he's already moved on to the next pilgrim. That's when it hits you. Babylon's religion isn't personal, it's administrative. The gods are less like cosmic parents and more like a board of directors, and every prayer is a transaction. Inside the temple courtyard, the smell intensifies incense, sweat, and the faint metallic tang of animal blood. You catch sight of a young acolyte sprinkling ashes on an altar while another slaughters a goat behind a curtain. The animal's cry echoes faintly, swallowed by the steady chanting of priests. A scribe nearby inscribes offerings onto a clay tablet, his stylus tapping like a drumbeat. You lean close enough to read a few symbols. 2 goats, 1 jar of honey, 1 bushel of barley, he murmurs to himself. Every item accounted for, every god appeased by the numbers. A merchant beside you whispers, "Miss a tithe," and they say your crops fail, or worse, your roof collapses. He touches a bronze charm hanging from his belt. "I don't take chances." You're about to ask whether the gods really punish people that way, but then you remember Hammurabi's code again. If a man accuses another of sorcery and cannot prove it, he shall be drowned. Apparently, even suspicion of divine involvement can get you killed. The priestly bureaucracy makes the law look almost merciful. As you watch the ceremony unfold, a strange quiet fills you. It's beautiful, in a way, the rhythmic chants, the glint of golden idols catching the setting sun. Statues of the gods line the inner courtyard. Ishtar, fierce and radiant. Nabu, the god of writing. Ea, of wisdom and water. Their faces are serene, but their eyes are hollow, unseeing. You hear a whispered superstition from somewhere behind you. Don't look into the god's eyes for too long, or he'll see your sins. It sounds ridiculous, until you catch your own reflection shimmering faintly in the polished bronze of Ishtar's statue. For a fleeting moment, you swear her gaze follows you. You back away a step and bump into another priest, this one older, his beard braided neatly. He studies you with the cool patience of a man who's seen every kind of sinner and fool. "You seek favour?" he asks. "Just safety," you say, "and maybe a bit of luck." He smiles faintly. Luck is for gamblers. Safety is for those who serve. He gestures toward the inner sanctum. The gods protect their own. Would you serve? You hesitate, remembering the scarred worker's advice about temple work, food, shade, obedience. Maybe it's not the worst deal in the world. What would I have to do? Rise before dawn, grind the barley, sweep the stones, pour the oil, speak no lies, think no doubts. His tone softens, almost kindly. The gods are merciful, but only to the disciplined. A trickle of sweat slides down your neck. You nod slowly, though you're not sure whether you're agreeing or surrendering. The priest waves a hand. "Not today. You must be purified first." He takes a small clay jug and pours cool water over your hands. It feels heavenly until you realize it smells faintly of sulfur. "Euphrates water," he explains, "cleanses body and spirit. Do not drink it." You thank him and step aside, wiping your hands on your tunic. Around you, more worshippers press forward, leaving offerings or kneeling in prayer. One woman sobs softly as a priest ties a cord around her wrist, an offering for her sick child, you overhear. "If he lives, she'll owe the temple 2 more goats," someone whispers. You wonder what happens if he doesn't. Historians still argue whether Babylon's religion was born from faith or fear. Were the Babylonians deeply pious, or just terrified of cosmic bureaucracy? The truth probably lies somewhere in between. For every devout believer chanting under the stars, there was another who simply didn't want his house struck by lightning or his name erased from the temple rolls. By the time you step back into the open air, the sky has turned violet. The drums have slowed, replaced by the haunting notes of a flute. A breeze carries the scent of smoke and baked clay. You glance back one last time. The ziggurat looms against the twilight, its tears glowing like embers. It's beautiful, yes, but also suffocating. You can almost feel the weight of every prayer, every sacrifice, pressing upward through its walls. And as you walk away, you realize something unsettling. In Babylon, the gods don't just live in temples, they live in everything. The laws, the work, the water, even the dust. You're never beyond their reach. You look down at your hands, still damp from the Euphrates water, and wonder whether the gods are watching now. Probably. You sneeze from the dust. Hopefully, they're not offended. The next morning begins not with birdsong, but with shouting someone, arguing over a marriage contract in the alley outside your sleeping spot. It's too early for legal disputes, but this is Babylon. If it can be written on clay, it can be fought over. You peek out to find a scribe sitting cross-legged, stylus in hand, while two families yell in stereo. On one side, a nervous young man clutching a small goat on a rope. On the other, a girl, about 16, silent, eyes down, her father doing the talking for her. You don't need a translation to figure it out. This is a wedding, or rather, a business transaction disguised as one. The scribe scratches lines into wet clay, muttering, "Dowry agreed upon, witness present, penalties recorded. Every pause is a law being written." You realize love here isn't declared, it's notarized. The girl's father gestures angrily. If she is found barren within 2 years, the husband may return her, but not the dowry. The groom's father fires back. 2 years? That's robbery. 1 year. They argue like merchants over livestock. The goat bleats, possibly in sympathy. Eventually, they settle on 18 months, and both men press their cylinder seals into the clay, a rolling signature of identity. The contract is done. The girl hasn't spoken once. That's the social ladder of Babylon in a nutshell. Men, property, gods, in that order. Women exist in a complicated limbo between person and possession. They can own land, run taverns, even lend money, but always under the shadow of male guardianship. Freedom comes with a dozen conditions carved in stone. A local woman, her hair wrapped in a fine veil, notices your confused expression and laughs softly. "You look surprised," she says. "We're lucky, compared to others." You raise an eyebrow. "Lucky? Better to be a Babylonian wife than a slave girl," she says, shrugging. "At least we get contracts." You follow her through the marketplace as she haggles for barley and dates. She moves with the brisk confidence of someone who knows her place and how to stretch the limits of it. "My husband travels for trade," she explains. "I keep his accounts. Sometimes I make better deals than he does." You glance at her bracelet, a small cylinder seal engraved with intricate patterns. "That's yours?" She smiles. "Mine. My name is on tablets in 3 temples." Then she adds, with a hint of pride, "Even the priests owe me a favor or two." It's a reminder that Babylonian women weren't powerless. They were just confined within walls they learned to navigate expertly. The veil she wears isn't merely fabric, it's a social password. Prostitutes and slaves are forbidden to wear it, a visual cue of class and respectability. In this world, fabric is law. As the sun climbs, you pass a group of slaves hauling amphorae of oil. One trips, the jar shatters, and oil spills across the dust. The overseer's hand flashes, striking him across the face. The slave bows deeply, muttering an apology. You feel the sting secondhand. Slavery in Babylon isn't about race. It's about debt, conquest, or bad luck. A free man can become a slave overnight if he owes the wrong person too much silver. A woman might sell herself or her child to survive famine. Some earn their freedom back, others vanish into temple service or private households forever. Historians still argue whether Babylonian slavery was mild compared to later empires. Some point to legal protections in Hammurabi's code, limits on beatings, rights to buy freedom, even compensation for injury. But others say those laws existed to protect property, not people. When your humanity is an asset on someone's ledger, mild becomes a hollow word. As you wander deeper into the city, you reach a courtyard where a public reading is underway. A priest scribe stands before a clay stele, a copy of the Code of Hammurabi itself. The laws spiral upward in cuneiform, each symbol carved centuries ago. He reads aloud in a droning voice, and a small crowd listens. Merchants, farmers, wives, and slaves alike. If a man accuses his wife, but has no proof, the priest chants, she shall plunge into the river. If the river overcomes her, the gods have judged her guilty. If she survives, she is innocent. A murmur runs through the crowd. You can't help glancing at the slow-moving Euphrates glinting beyond the city walls. Trial by drowning, it sounds absurd, until you remember this is a world where the gods micromanage justice. The priest continues, if a man strikes his father, his hands shall be cut off. The crowd nods solemnly, as if he's reading the weather report. The logic is brutal but consistent. Punishment must mirror the crime. Babylon's morality isn't flexible, it's geometry. Afterward, a young man nearby sighs. The king's justice is fair, he says, but only if you can afford witnesses. He gestures to his torn tunic. My brother was fined 3 shekels for stealing a loaf. The baker's cousin works for the temple. Guess who won? You can only nod. Bureaucracy, it seems, has divine backing here. As dusk paints the walls with copper light, you find yourself near a small courtyard tavern. Inside, a woman pours beer from a clay jar into wide-mouthed cups. Her eyes are sharp, her laughter louder than the men's. She notices your hesitation and waves you in. First drinks on the house, she says. You take a cautious sip. The beer is thick, almost chewy, with floating grains. You're new, she adds, grinning. Everyone's new until Babylon eats them alive. She's the owner, she explains, widowed twice. No children. Under Babylonian law, that gives her rare independence. I answer to no man, she says proudly, except the tax collector. You raise your cup. To freedom, then? She smirks. To surviving without one? The men around her laugh, pounding their cups on the table. In that moment, you see the strange balance of Babylon, harsh, ordered, and yet full of tiny rebellions. People adapt. They find space between laws, cracks in the hierarchy, little freedoms that slip past the scribe's tablets. Outside, the night hums. Somewhere, a woman sings a hymn to Ishtar, goddess of love and war. The melody drifts through the streets, soft and mournful. You can't tell whether it's a prayer or a warning. In this city, power and devotion intertwine like threads in a woven mat. Every man, every woman, every slave plays their part in a cosmic structure too vast to question. You're beginning to see the pattern and realizing you'll never quite fit inside it. By mid-morning, the air of Babylon is already thick enough to taste. The sun hasn't yet reached its peak, but the heat clings to everything, people, animals, even the scent of roasting fish. You make your way toward the Grand Market District, following the noise like a pilgrim to chaos. The main thoroughfare opens suddenly before you, and your senses are immediately ambushed. Hundreds of stalls crowd both sides of the street, a riot of colour, sound, and smell. Traders shout over one another, praising their wares, cursing their rivals, and promising deals blessed by Marduk himself. It's like walking into a living storm of human energy. To your left, a perfumer fans incense, smoke toward passing shoppers, his stand lined with tiny alabaster jars. "Imported from Dilmun," he cries, referring to a faraway land across the sea. He lifts a stopper and offers you a sniff. The scent is floral and smoky, almost intoxicating, until you catch the underlying note of something earthy. "What's in it?" you ask. "Sesame oil, myrrh, a little crushed lotus," he says, then adds proudly, "and a drop of crocodile fat." You blink. "Crocodile?" He nods, utterly serious. "Good for the skin. Keeps away evil spirits and mosquitoes." You thank him politely and move on, deciding to let the mosquitoes win this round. The next stall over sells jewellery strings of carnelian and lapis lazuli, glittering in the sunlight. The merchant, a woman with eyes sharp as obsidian, drapes a necklace over your wrist. "See this blue stone? Lapis from far to the east. Fit for a priest's wife, or a fool with silver." She smiles when you hand it back. You're the latter, I think. You laugh despite yourself, and she seems pleased. "At least you have humour," she says. That's rarer than lapis these days. Beyond her, the market shifts from luxury to necessity. Fishmongers sit beside heaps of fresh or recently alive catch from the river. The smell is eye-watering. Clouds of flies hang in the air like tiny storm systems. A man swats them away lazily while weighing a slab of catfish. "Fresh," he insists, though the word feels like wishful thinking. Nearby, a boy sells onions and garlic from baskets, his bare feet black with mud. He can't be more than 10. You give him a barley token and take a bulb out of sympathy more than hunger. He bows deeply, thanking you in a rehearsed tone. In this city, gratitude sounds like survival. As you wander further, the sounds blend into a single, throbbing rhythm. Bleating goats, hissing pots of oil, hammering metal, the low hum of barter. You pass a blacksmith shaping bronze, sparks flying like fireflies. A scribe sits beside him, ready to inscribe receipts onto clay tablets. Even trade, you realize, is sacred here, recorded, witnessed, eternalized. You stop near a stall piled with dyed fabrics, brilliant blues, deep reds, pale linen. The merchant strokes the fabric like a proud parent. "Dyed with indigo and madder root," he says. "Hard to find, harder to afford." He squints at you. You're new. You don't have a patron, do you? You shake your head. "Then you'd better find one," he says, matter-of-factly. In Babylon, a man without a patron is like a goat without a tether. Before you can respond, a sudden shout breaks through the noise, followed by a chorus of coughs. You turn to see a commotion near a pen of livestock. One of the goats is on its side, twitching, foam dripping from its mouth. The seller rushes forward, yelling at the crowd to stay back, but it's too late. The animal's fit stops as abruptly as it began. A fly lands on its lip. The crowd murmurs. Someone mutters, "Bad omen." Another says, "It's the fever again." You ask a nearby man what they mean. He shrugs grimly. The sickness comes with the heat. One day you're fine, next day your skin turns yellow, your eyes burn, and the priests say you angered Nurgle. You step back instinctively. The man chuckles dryly. "Don't worry, you only catch it if the gods choose you." Historians still argue whether Babylon's periodic fevers were malaria, dysentery, or something far worse. Whatever it was, the Babylonians didn't separate the medical from the spiritual. Illness wasn't just biology, it was judgment. And yet, commerce never stops. Even as the dead goat is dragged away, the merchant starts haggling with a new customer. Only one's sick, he insists. The rest are healthy. You can't decide if it's denial or pure economic instinct. Maybe both. Further down the street, you find a row of food stalls. A woman ladles out steaming bowls of lentil stew, the aroma oddly comforting despite the flies. You sit on a low stool and trade a token for a bowl. The first spoonful burns your tongue thick, earthy, spiced with garlic and something unfamiliar. Tamarisk, she explains proudly. Good for the heart. You nod appreciatively. Delicious. She beams. My husband says my cooking could charm a god. Then her expression shifts. Or poison a rival. Depends on the portion. You laugh, nearly choking on your stew. The woman leans closer. Don't eat from anyone who won't eat their own food. That's Babylon's first rule. You glance around and realize she's right. Every cook, every seller tastes their own product first. A practical kind of faith. As you finish your meal, the street performers begin their routines. A musician plucks a lyre beside a monkey in a tiny bronze collar. A juggler tosses clay cups into the air. Children chase each other through the dust, their laughter cutting briefly through the din. For a moment, the city feels almost alive, in a way that transcends its filth and fear. And then you see it, the contrast that defines Babylon. Just beyond the performers, a man lies in the shade, coughing weakly, his skin pale and blotched. No one stops to help. A few step around him without looking. You realize the market isn't just a place of trade, it's a theatre of survival. Beauty, wealth, decay, disease, all performing side by side under the same pitiless sun. You toss your empty bowl into a pile of broken ones and look up. The ziggurat towers in the distance, glinting faintly through the haze. It seems to watch everything, the buying, the dying, the laughter. You take a deep breath of air that smells like sweat, spices, and rot. Somewhere nearby, a child giggles as a perfumer spritzes his wrist with crocodile oil. A fly lands on your cheek. You swat it away, wondering which of the two, the perfume or the pest, is more dangerous. In Babylon, the line between luxury and plague is thinner than a thread of silk. You can't help but think, maybe the gods prefer it that way. By your third dawn in Babylon, your scalp itches. At first, you think it's the dust, or the heat, or the fact that your bed last night was a pile of reeds that smelled like wet goat. But when you scratch too long, a tiny, hard thing under your fingernail tells you the truth. Something else lives on you now. Congratulations, you've met the Babylonian headlouse. You look around, no one else seems bothered. A nearby worker casually combs through his hair with a bone pick, flicking the creatures into the dirt like crumbs. The city may build ziggurats that kiss the sky, but no one here has invented shampoo. Still, the itching drives you half mad. You ask around, and someone points you toward the Asu, a kind of doctor who keeps shop near the temple district. The man's hut smells of clay, herbs, and smoke. Shelves line the walls, filled with small bowls of powders, dried roots, and bits of metal. When you explain your problem, he squints, studying your scalp like a priest reading omens. Lamashtu's children, he mutters darkly, referring to a demoness blamed for sickness and pestilence. He gestures for you to sit. We'll drive them out. You brace yourself. He mixes crushed garlic, cedar oil, and honey in a small pot, chanting under his breath as he stirs. The chant isn't just decoration in Babylonian medicine. The boundary between science and sorcery doesn't exist. Every cure needs both ingredients, matter and magic. He rubs the mixture into your hair, murmuring an incantation older than the language itself. May the evil spirit depart. May the sickness flee. By Shamash's light and Ea's wisdom, let the body be whole again. You're not sure what works faster, the honey or the placebo. Either way, the chanting slows your pulse. The air hums with the rhythm of faith. When he finishes, he presses a small clay amulet into your hand, shaped like a coiled serpent. Hang this above where you sleep. Lamashtu fears serpents. You nod, thanking him. He adds with a grin, and if that fails, shave your head. You leave feeling both protected and sticky. The honey drips into your collar as you walk back through the alleys, hair glinting like amber in the sun. But Babylon's medical challenges don't stop with lice. That evening, your stomach revolts against something you ate at the market, maybe spoiled lentils, maybe river water with seasoning. You spend hours doubled over, praying to every god you can remember. When the pain doesn't fade, you return to the same healer, who listens carefully and nods. Bad water spirit, he diagnoses gravely. We'll expel it. He offers a potion of beer mixed with crushed dates and salt to cleanse your inside. You drink it. It's vile. It works a little too well. Then comes the ritual part. The Asu lights incense and recites another spell, this one directed at your invisible invader. O demon of the gut, who sits where food should rest, leave the body of this man. Go back to the darkness below. You can't decide whether to laugh or cry, but after an hour, the cramps subside. Whether it was the chant, the beer, or sheer dehydration, you don't care. You feel reborn. Later, when you wander through the city, you notice how many people bear scars, limps, and missing teeth. Disease is everywhere in the air, the water, the skin. Yet somehow, life goes on. A woman with clouded eyes sells onions by the road. A child coughs in the dust. A priest in spotless linen walks past them all, murmuring prayers to Gula, goddess of healing, whose temple stands not far from here. Inside, the sick kneel before a bronze statue of a woman holding a dog Gula's sacred animal and leave offerings. Honey, grain, sometimes a lock of hair. You join them briefly, if only out of gratitude for still being alive. A priest offers a final blessing in a calm, practiced voice. The gods gave us illness to test our faith and remedies to test our wisdom. You wonder how much wisdom can fit in a jar of garlic and honey. By the time you return to your sleeping mat, your scalp has stopped itching. The amulet hangs above your head, its serpent shape catching the moonlight. Somewhere nearby, a donkey brays, a baby cries, and a woman sings a lullaby to the gods. You close your eyes and think about the miracle of modern antibiotics, sterile water, and pest control, all things you'll never take for granted again. In Babylon, medicine is a gamble played between the divine and the desperate. And tonight, for once, you feel like the gods might be on your side. You wake to shouting in the street. 2 men are fighting, one clutching a torn sack, the other waving his arms and accusing him of theft. A small crowd forms instantly. There's no police here, no 911, no calm mediator with a clipboard. Just neighbours, witnesses, and the heavy weight of Babylon's favourite authority figure, the law of Hammurabi. Before you can blink, the accused is dragged by the wrist toward a nearby square where a scribe sits beneath a canopy of woven reeds. You follow, partly out of curiosity, partly out of fear that standing still too long will somehow make you guilty too. The scribe dips his reed pen into ink and begins recording the testimony on a clay tablet, slow, precise strokes that bake the moment into eternity. Hammurabi's code, carved centuries ago into black basalt, still rules every heartbeat of the city. There are no gentle fines, no appeals, just consequences, spelled out with a brutal kind of poetry. If a man steals from a temple or palace, one passage says, he shall be put to death, and he who receives the stolen thing shall also be put to death. You glance nervously at the market stalls around you. You remember touching a date yesterday to see if it was ripe. Did anyone notice? You didn't buy it. You didn't eat it. Still, your hands sweat a little. The crowd murmurs as the accused man protests his innocence. "I didn't steal," he cries. "He dropped it." But in Babylon, words mean little without proof. There are no lawyers here, no cross-examinations. Instead, the scribe nods solemnly and orders a river trial. The crowd suddenly parts, leading everyone toward the Euphrates. The river trial is simple and horrifying. The accused is tossed into the river. If he drowns, the gods have judged him guilty. If he survives, his accuser faces the punishment instead. "Let the river god decide," the scribe says, with the calm certainty of someone who's seen this too many times. You stand on the bank as the man is bound and pushed into the muddy water. The crowd goes quiet. The current swirls, the surface ripples, and for a long, unbearable moment, he's gone. Then miraculously he bursts to the surface, coughing and gasping, dragged ashore by a fisherman. The crowd erupts. "Innocent!" someone shouts. The accuser turns pale. Within the hour, he's bound instead to face the same justice he wished on another. It's terrifyingly efficient. You think about how much simpler trials would be. Back home, just a judge, some paperwork, maybe a jury. Here, the gods themselves are the jury, and they don't do retrials. Historians still argue whether Hammurabi's laws were truly enforced so strictly, or whether they served more as moral warning signs. Some say they were propaganda, a king's promise of fairness carved for the ages. Others insist the brutality was real, that ordinary Babylonians lived one mistake away from ruin. As you wander through the city that evening, you start to notice how fear shapes everything. Merchants double count their scales. Workers bow deeply when overseers approach. Even children whisper when priests pass by. You hear another case unfold at the edge of a courtyard. A woman accused of neglecting her husband's home. Her face is pale, her eyes steady. The judge, a stern man in a linen robe, questions her calmly. "Did you leave of your own will?" She hesitates. "Yes, but..." He doesn't let her finish. "Then you shall return and bear your duty." The verdict is written on another clay tablet, dried in the sun, stacked beside hundreds of others. Justice, archived in mud. Later, a Babylonian friend explains to you how serious false accusation is here. If you accuse someone and cannot prove it, he says, you face the same punishment they would have. He smiles thinly. So people think carefully before speaking. You nod, though you can't help but notice that carefully often means silently. As the sun dips below the ziggurat, a scribe lights an oil lamp and begins reading aloud from one of the tablets a collection of Hammurabi's decrees copied for training. His voice echoes through the courtyard, steady and grave. If a builder constructs a house and it collapses, killing the owner, the builder shall be put to death. If it kills the owner's son, the builder's son shall be put to death. The crowd listens in silence. The words sound ancient and alien, yet disturbingly familiar, a civilization's attempt to make order out of chaos, even if it means balancing blood for blood. You can't help but picture a world where every small act, every accident, every rumour can spiral into divine judgment. You think of the river, the scribe's pen, the priest's chant. In Babylon, survival isn't just about food or shelter. It's about staying invisible. When night falls, you retreat to your corner of the quarter, passing torches that flicker like warning lights. Somewhere, a judge's voice still carries through the air, reading another sentence aloud. Justice never sleeps here. You stretch out on your reed mat and trace the faint lines on your palm, wondering if Hammurabi would have found a law to fit you. Probably. He had 282 of them, more than enough to cover every breath, every step, every misstep of human life. Above you, the stars blink through the dusty haze, indifferent and ancient, the same ones Hammurabi himself once looked upon. Somewhere beyond them, you hope the gods are kinder than the laws written in their name. By midday, Babylon turns into a furnace. The air itself feels like it's been baked in a kiln thick, shimmering, alive with heat. You squint toward the horizon, but even the ziggurat seems to blur, its stepped sides wavering in a haze that smells faintly of dust and burnt reeds. You didn't think it could get hotter than yesterday, but Babylon has no limit. The sun sits directly overhead, like a god with something to prove. Sweat slicks every inch of your skin. Your clothes' rough linen, that was once white, now cling like wet parchment. The streets are alive with noise, though everyone moves slowly, as if swimming through invisible syrup. Donkeys bray, vendors shout. Somewhere, a hammer beats against copper. The sound echoes down the narrow lanes, where shadows are too thin to help. You pass a group of water carriers balancing clay jars on their shoulders. They shout, "Euphrates water, fresh from the river." The crowd parts for them, not out of respect, but desperation. You rush forward, coins in hand, and take a sip from a ladle. Instant regret. It's warm, lukewarm, with the unmistakable taste of mud and something metallic. You remember the stories you've heard. Waste dumped into the river, offal washed downstream, people bathing and praying in the same water they drink. You try not to imagine what else might be floating in it. Still, you drink again. You don't have a choice. Nearby, a fisherman guts a catch under the blazing sun. The fish glisten silver blue in the light, their eyes already dull. Flies swarm so thickly you can hear them hum. The smell hits you like a wave, rot, salt, and heat. Babylon might be a marvel of civilization, the navel of the world, as the poets call it, but its hygiene is a different story. You watch a boy sweep the street with a palm broom, pushing refuse toward the gutters that lead, inevitably, to the river. The Euphrates receives everything: prayers, corpses, sewage, offerings. A holy artery clogged with the city's sins. Historians still argue whether ancient Babylonians truly understood sanitation. Some point to clay pipes and drainage canals as proof of early engineering genius. Others say they were built more for ceremony than for cleanliness. Whatever the truth, you wouldn't dip your foot in that river willingly, not unless you wanted a rash that glows in moonlight. You wander closer anyway. The river glints under the sun, wide and sluggish, its surface broken by the slow crawl of reed boats. Men pole them along, hauling baskets of dates, bricks, and fish. A few wave lazily as they pass. To them, this water isn't dangerous. It's life itself. You crouch at the bank and splash a bit over your face. The shock of warmth is startling. Even the river isn't cool. It's like touching liquid sun. But for a moment, the sweat eases and the world sharpens again. Then comes the hunger. It's a strange kind of ache, dull but insistent. You haven't eaten since dawn, and the smell of roasted grain drifts from a nearby stall. You follow your nose to a man turning flat cakes of barley dough on a clay griddle. They're hard, thin, and unevenly cooked, but right now they look divine. You trade a small copper coin and bite in. The taste is dry, earthy, almost smoky. A smear of date syrup helps, but barely. You wash it down with a gulp of tepid water and almost choke. This isn't comfort food, it's survival food. As you eat, the baker tells you he's lucky this year's harvest hasn't failed. When the barley dies, he says, the people starve. The gods test us with drought, and the river answers only when it pleases. His eyes flick toward the cloudless sky. You do the same, not a hint of shade, not a breath of wind. Just endless blue, the colour of punishment. By late afternoon, even the animals look wilted. Dogs lie flat in the dirt, tongues lolling. Goats stand in the alleys like statues. You pass one poor ox collapsed beside a cart, its owner slapping it weakly, too tired to shout. You find a spot under a narrow awning and collapse beside an old man selling small clay figurines of gods. He fans himself with a reed mat and smiles toothlessly. "Too hot for mortals," he says. "Only Shamash enjoys this weather." You laugh weakly, and he nods toward the river. "Go at sunset," he says. "The water cools, the priests sing, and maybe the heat will forget you." So you wait. When the sky finally softens from white to gold, you drag yourself back to the riverbank. The air smells different now, still dusty, but softer, touched with evening smoke and cooking fires. Children wade in the shallows, laughing as the day finally releases its grip. You watch as a priest from the temple of Ea pours a libation into the current, a small bowl of milk and honey, murmuring a prayer for purification. Around him, worshippers dip their hands and faces, whispering their own quiet hopes into the moving water. You imitate them, scooping a handful and letting it run down your arms. The sensation is almost holy, almost clean. The city's noise fades to a hum. For the first time all day, you can breathe. The sun is gone, the heat dissolving into dusk. The river reflects 1,000 tiny flames from torches along the banks. And though you know what flows beneath that shimmer, filth, decay, forgotten offerings, you let yourself believe for one moment that the water is sacred. Because here, it is. You sit there until the stars appear, until the city exhales, until you almost forget that you're a stranger, trying not to die of thirst in the birthplace of civilization. And as the night wind stirs across the water, carrying the smell of clay and ash, you realize, in Babylon, survival isn't about comfort, it's about surrender. You drink, you breathe, you endure. Tomorrow will be hotter. Night doesn't bring rest in Babylon, it brings suspense. The air doesn't cool, it just changes flavour, trading the dry bite of heat for a damp heaviness that smells of dust, smoke, and distant rain. The Euphrates glimmers faintly under torchlight, and you can just make out the shadowed bulk of the ziggurat towering against a darkening sky. The city's heartbeat slows, but it never stops. From every direction comes the faint chorus of sound. A goat bleating in some alley, a woman singing to her child, merchants rolling up their reed mats. And beneath it all, a new sound, low, rumbling, far away. Thunder. It starts as a whisper, a tremor beneath your ribs. Then another. A flash, brief, white and sharp, slices across the clouds above the ziggurat. For a second, the blue-glazed bricks of the Ishtar gate gleam like polished jewels. Then darkness swallows everything again. You feel the first drop hit your shoulder, fat and warm. Then another, then dozens. Rain in Babylon is a rare event. and when it comes, it's not gentle, it's a sermon. Around you, people begin to murmur, half in awe, half in fear. Children dart under doorways, women clutch amulets. You spot a priest standing at the temple gate, arms raised, shouting to the sky in Akkadian. "Adad speaks!" Someone calls out the storm god, master of thunder and rain. You can almost hear him now in the roiling clouds, his fury rolling over the plains. The wind howls down the street, toppling a basket of figs. Lightning cracks again, this time close enough to illuminate the entire street. For an instant, the faces of people staring upward, the flash of wet cobblestones, the gold glint of temple spires. Then the rain hits in earnest, hammering the earth, washing the day's filth into the gutters. You duck under a clay awning beside a half-shuttered tavern, but even there the water splashes your feet. It's chaos, beautiful, wild, and a little terrifying. A man beside you mutters. He's angry. Someone has broken an oath. His wife hushes him quickly, pulling their child closer. You can't tell if he's joking or if he truly believes the god of storms has descended in wrath. Probably both. Historians still argue whether Babylonians saw storms as punishment or blessing. The tablets mention both, rain as divine mercy, lightning as divine warning. But when thunder rolls over your head like a god dragging his chariot across the sky, punishment seems the safer guess. The priest continues his chanting, his voice almost drowned by the rain. Between the flashes of lightning, you catch words, Adad, Lord of Clouds, mercy, forgive. His linen robe clings to him, soaked through, yet he doesn't stop. Faith here is physical labour. Then a smell hits you, earth, wet clay, and something faintly metallic, the scent of the world being scrubbed clean. You tilt your head back. Let the rain strike your face. It's warm, not refreshing, but still it feels alive. And as strange as it is, you realize the city almost seems to breathe with the storm. The streets pulse with light, the temples shimmer, the statues of gods gleam as though they're smiling. But not everyone smiles. In a nearby alley, you spot an old woman crouched over a clay pot, whispering to herself. You edge closer and realize she's covering the pot with a piece of linen, muttering a charm to keep the evil spirits from entering her house with the rain. "Storms carry ghosts," she says without looking up. "And ghosts remember." You decide to remember that, too, just in case. The rain lasts for hours, drumming steadily. When it finally fades to a drizzle, the streets are transformed. Puddles shimmer with reflections of torches, frogs croak somewhere unseen, and the air hums with the smell of wet dust. But the silence that follows feels uneasy, fragile. You make your way back toward your sleeping mat, stepping carefully in the lamplight. You notice a thin shape sliding through the mud ahead of you. A snake, small, brown, fast. It vanishes into a crack between bricks before you can even react. Everyone here knows to watch for them. The old clay houses and damp alleys make perfect homes for serpents, scorpions, and worse. You shake out your bedding before lying down because you've learned the hard way that something always finds its way inside. Your mat is still damp from the humidity, and the air buzzes faintly with insects. Outside, you hear the quiet splash of water dripping from rooftops. Somewhere distant, another roll of thunder grumbles like a god clearing his throat. You pull your reed blanket tighter, eyes fixed on the ceiling beams above you. Babylon sleeps lightly because the city never lets you forget who's in charge. The gods, the weather, and everything that crawls beneath your bed. It's strange how quickly fear becomes routine. You think of the man who said Adad was angry. You think of the priest who stood in the rain without flinching. You think of the snake, vanishing like a warning. Then, softly, you hear singing. It's coming from the temple of Ishtar, a few streets away. A haunting melody rises through the night, slow and trembling, carried by women's voices. The hymn speaks of renewal, of the storm's cleansing power, and for a moment it doesn't sound like fear at all, it sounds like gratitude. You close your eyes and listen until the song fades into the rhythm of dripping water and distant thunder. The gods, for now, have gone quiet. But you don't dare to fall fully asleep. Not here, not under skies that flash with divine temper and snakes that move like whispers. You just lie there, eyes half open, waiting for the next roll of thunder to tell you that Babylon's gods are still awake. You drift into sleep the way a drowning man slips beneath water slowly, unwillingly, with one ear still straining for thunder. Babylon doesn't sleep peacefully, it dreams. And dreams here are not private, they're divine messages, codes sent from gods through the trembling veil between waking and night. Your body rests on a mat of woven reeds. The room hums with leftover heat from the day. Somewhere outside, a donkey brays once, then silence swallows the sound. You let your eyes close. Almost immediately, the dream begins. You're standing on the riverbank, but the Euphrates runs backward, its current curling toward the mountains instead of the sea. Fish leap into the air and turn into birds mid-flight. A temple bell rings, but the sound comes from beneath the water. The sky ripples like wet clay, and for a moment you swear you can see words written there, tiny cuneiform signs glowing in gold, too fast to read. Then a figure appears at the water's edge, tall, faceless, robed in blue. It points toward the ziggurat, and its hand is not a hand, but a wing. When it opens its mouth to speak, you hear the hiss of rain, the roll of thunder, the hum of insects. You wake, gasping, drenched in sweat. It's still night. The air presses heavy against your skin. Across the courtyard, you hear someone murmuring your neighbour, reciting a protection spell. A dog growls softly, then whimpers. The city feels half awake, half dreaming with you. In Babylon, this is normal. Dreams aren't dismissed as nonsense. They're evidence. Every sigh, every flicker of the mind is a message. And every message needs decoding. By dawn, the priests of Marduk will climb to the temple roof to interpret the night's visions. They'll read the sky, watch the smoke of offerings, and consult the shutu, the ancient dream tablets that list meanings for thousands of symbols. If you dream of a lion, it means triumph. If you dream of a snake, deceit. If a river runs backward, it means the gods are warning of upheaval. If you fly, you'll rise in status. If you fall, beware the king's anger. You remember the winged figure, the backward flowing river, and you wonder which god was speaking to you. Adad, the stormbringer? Nabu, the keeper of writing? Or something older, nameless, waiting beneath the water? You lie back down, heart still racing. The thought strikes you that maybe you're not alone in your dream, that somewhere in another sleeping mind, someone else saw the same vision tonight. The priests say the gods often send messages to many at once, weaving a single warning through 100 mortal dreams. You close your eyes again, hoping for peace, but sleep drags you under like a jealous river. This time, you stand inside the ziggurat itself. The walls breathe expanding, contracting. The air tastes of ash and honey. You climb stairs that melt behind you, each step dissolving into sand. At the top waits an altar of black stone. Upon it lies a tablet, glowing faintly. You reach for it, but as your fingers touch the surface, it crumbles into dust, and the dust forms words. Do not speak of what you saw. You wake again, choking on the dry taste of air. Outside, the horizon glows pale, the first hint of sunrise. The storm is gone, but puddles still glisten in the streets like shards of broken glass. From the temple, you hear the low call of a priest announcing the morning ritual. You step outside and see a small crowd gathering near the ziggurat steps. A man there eyes wild, clothes soaked shouts that the gods came to him in a dream and told him to cleanse the city. The priests drag him away, chanting purification prayers. You wonder how close you came to being him. In Babylon, to dream is to risk discovery. If your vision pleases the priests, you might gain favour, or even be summoned to assist the temple scribes. But if it displeases them, if it smells of rebellion or doom, you might be branded cursed, or worse, possessed. Some people here avoid sleep entirely for days, terrified of what their minds might reveal. Others sleep with talismans, small clay charms shaped like wings, eyes, or fish, to guard their souls from unwanted visitors. You notice one hanging by your doorway, an eye carved from blue lapis, watching silently as if to remind you that even in rest you are never unseen. Later that morning, you pass a woman selling incense near the gate. She tells you the storm last night was a cleansing, that Adad has washed away bad omens. She presses a small charm into your hand, a clay moon stamped with cuneiform. For peaceful dreams, she says. You tuck it into your pouch, though you're not sure peace is what you want. In this city, peace feels suspicious, like a pause before a god speaks again. That night, when you finally lie down, you keep the charm by your head. You whisper a prayer to Nabu, asking him to make your dreams clear, not kind, because you've learned that here, ignorance isn't safety, it's blindness. As sleep comes, you feel the pulse of the city again, the same hum you heard in the storm, alive beneath every stone. Babylon dreams through you, its gods breathe through you. And even if you never speak of what you saw, they already know. In the darkness, your mind begins to shimmer again. The Euphrates runs backward. A winged shadow gestures from the ziggurat. Somewhere far above, thunder whispers your name. And you realize, in Babylon, you don't just dream. You're dreamed back. The sky hasn't yet turned gold, but Babylon is already alive again. You wake to the rasp of a broom sweeping clay dust across the courtyard, to the smell of ash and sour barley, to the low hum of chanting that drifts down from the ziggurat's terraces. Dawn is technically hours away, but this city doesn't wait for sunlight. It moves on its own rhythm like a heart that refuses to rest, pulsing through the night and into morning without missing a beat. You sit up, bones sore, tongue dry, and listen. Somewhere nearby, a group of temple slaves is scrubbing the stone steps of Marduk's temple, their whispered songs mixing with the clatter of buckets. Each brushstroke, each movement is part prayer, part punishment. The priests insist the gods despise uncleanliness, but you're beginning to suspect it's the people they enjoy watching suffer most. By the time the first orange light bleeds over the horizon, the markets are already stirring. The bread sellers stoke their ovens, the potter's apprentices hammer at clay, and a caravan rolls through the gate from the desert, its donkeys panting under loads of copper, cedar, and salt. A man shouts orders from the top of a cart, while a boy runs beside him with a torch one flame against the endless grey dawn. You wander through the awakening streets, past houses whose roofs double as bedrooms and prayer platforms. Women lean over the parapets, shaking out rugs and gossip in equal measure. Somewhere a baby wails. Somewhere else a flute begins to play. You could almost forget the heat that will come later, the swarming flies, the sweat and dust, almost. Babylon, a merchant once said, never sleeps because the gods never do. And he's right. Even now, the temples glow with oil lamps that were never extinguished from the night before. Inside, priests mutter incantations over bowls of water and smoke. They're measuring time not by hours, but by ritual, a rhythm older than clocks. For them, dawn isn't the start of a day. It's the next verse in a chant that began before any of them were born. You pass by a scribe already bent over a clay tablet, pressing wedge marks with a stylus so thin it looks like a reed frozen in mud. He's recording grain weights, or prayers, or court orders, it hardly matters. To Babylon, writing itself is sacred. The word naru means both story and monument, because once something is written, it becomes real. That's the secret the priests know. Control the tablets, and you control the truth. Historians still argue whether Babylon's bureaucratic obsession was born from devotion or paranoia. Maybe both. You can't tell the difference anymore. The temple's ledgers stretch longer than the streets, filled with lists of who owes what, who sinned, who died, and who pretended not to. Every breath here leaves a trace somewhere on clay. You step aside as a file of chained workers shuffle past, heading toward the river docks. Their ankles ring with iron soft, rhythmic, almost like the priest's bells. The overseer barks orders while chewing on a date pit. It's not cruelty, exactly, just routine. In Babylon, even suffering has a schedule. And yet, beneath all that exhaustion, there's beauty. As the sun finally breaks the horizon, it strikes the glazed tiles of the Ishtar Gate, and suddenly the lions, dragons, and bulls seem to shimmer into motion. Gold and lapis dance across the surface like water. You can almost imagine them coming alive, protectors of a city too proud to sleep. Near the gate, a group of travellers kneel and pray before entering. They're from far to the east, you can tell by their clothes, woven lighter, their hair bound differently. They murmur, thanks to the goddess Ishtar for safe passage, then step inside to face the noise and chaos with the same mix of awe and fear you felt on your first day. You want to warn them, don't expect rest here. But the words stay in your throat. As you walk, a faint wind brushes against your face, bringing the scent of wet earth from the river. The Euphrates gleams under the rising sun, reflecting the towers like mirrors. You notice fishermen already wading in, their nets glittering with droplets. Some sing hymns to Enki, god of water and wisdom, hoping to charm a better catch. Others simply work in silence, faces blank, eyes half closed from sleeplessness. You realize now that in Babylon, the line between dream and wake never truly exists. The city blurs it on purpose. Priests interpret the night's omens, merchants trade at dawn, soldiers drill by midday, scribes write until dusk, and when darkness falls, the whole rhythm starts again. Like clockwork, centuries before clocks. You stop to buy a small loaf of bread from a boy barely older than 12. He yawns as he counts the copper you hand him. When you ask if he ever sleeps, he shrugs and says, "Sleep is for the gods." You laugh softly, but he doesn't. The bread is hard, but still warm. You eat it as you walk, watching shadows shrink under the growing light. Near the palace, the king's guards march in formation, bronze helmets flashing. They don't speak. Their sandals slap the stone in perfect unison, echoing like a heartbeat, Babylon's heartbeat. Never resting, never slowing. One of the guards glances your way, eyes sharp, then looks forward again. You can tell he hasn't slept either. But fatigue means nothing here. Status does. The powerful have scribes to record their greatness. slaves to carry their burdens, and gods to justify both. You begin to feel it again, that quiet, suffocating pressure, as if the city itself is leaning in close, whispering, "Keep moving," and you do. Because everyone here does, even when they're sick, or afraid, or half dreaming from lack of rest. Babylon demands their motion. Like a great river that doesn't care who drowns, it carries its people forward. By the time the sun climbs fully above the horizon, you've walked half the city. The air hums with life, not joy, not peace, just motion. Slaves sweep, priests chant, merchants shout. Children chase each other through puddles that steam away before noon. You look back toward the ziggurat, where the morning chant continues, endless as the city itself. For the first time, you understand what Babylon truly is, not a place, but a rhythm, a pulse, a prayer that never ends. And if you stay long enough, it pulls you in, sinks your breath to its tempo, until you can't tell whether you're awake or still dreaming. The city never sleeps, and neither, it seems, do you. The first light of morning spills across Babylon's rooftops like molten gold, setting every tile, dome, and column aglow. The city seems to shimmer in the heat before the heat even arrives alive, immense, eternal. From a distance, it could almost be paradise. Up close, you know better. You stand where the Euphrates bends around the city's edge, watching fishermen haul in their catch. The air smells of mud, sweat, and smoke from thousands of hearths. A rooster crows somewhere on a rooftop, though it's drowned out almost instantly by the clamour of waking Babylon. The slap of sandals, the crack of whips, the drone of merchants arguing over barley prices. And as you stand there bone-tired, half-starved, your skin still tasting of dust, you finally understand what this place really is. Not a cradle of civilization, a crucible. You've seen the beauty. Blue-glazed lions striding across temple walls, gold-tipped ziggurats piercing the dawn. You've heard the songs of priests and the whisper of tablets being carved, preserving thoughts that will outlive everyone who made them. But beneath all of that, beneath the splendour, the hymns, the stories, is struggle. Endless, grinding, sacred struggle. It's here that humanity learned to trade comfort for permanence. Once upon a time, people wandered. They followed rivers and seasons. They lived lightly, moving with the land instead of trying to cage it. But here on this baked strip of Mesopotamian soil, they stopped. They built. They endured. And in doing so, they trapped themselves in something magnificent and merciless all at once. Because in Babylon, survival isn't just about food or shelter. It's about order. About feeding gods who don't eat, obeying kings who call themselves divine, and building walls so tall that even the horizon seems to give up and turn away. Historians still argue whether civilization began here because of necessity or ambition. Did humans settle by the rivers because they had to, because the land's fertility made it impossible to leave? Or because they wanted to, because they dreamed of monuments and memory? You suspect both. Babylon is what happens when need and desire shake hands and decide never to part. The sun climbs higher, gilding the tops of the ziggurats. Priests ascend the steps again, this time carrying offerings of bread, beer, and incense. The smell of burning myrrh wafts over the streets, sweet and cloying, masking for a moment the stench of the city beneath. Children chase one another through the alleys, laughing in bursts. A potter sits cross-legged by his wheel, shaping clay into bowls that will one day crumble back into dust. Life here doesn't pause long enough to notice its own fragility. And yet, you can feel the fragility everywhere. In the cracked bricks of a wall, in the faded eyes of a worker dragging a cart, in the quiet sighs of those too tired to look up at the gods who demand so much. Babylon may feel immortal, but it's built by mortal hands, hands blistered, trembling, and dirt streaked. You remember the first time you saw the Ishtar Gate, the way it towered above you, impossibly blue against the desert sky. Back then, it felt like proof of eternity. Now, it feels like a mirage, an illusion painted in lapis and limestone to distract from the truth. Every wall eventually falls. Every god fades. Every empire forgets that it, too, will sleep. Still, there's a strange comfort in that realization. You watch as the morning light creeps up the ziggurat's sides, chasing away the shadows that had gathered during the long night. The priests' voices echo, low and rhythmic, blending with the rush of the river. It's as if the whole city is breathing one vast organism, ancient and alive, pulsing between dawn and dusk, between birth and decay. You imagine what will happen centuries from now. The bricks will crumble, the temples will collapse, the Euphrates will shift its course. And somewhere, far in the future, people will stand in museums, staring at fragments of your world, tiny clay tablets etched with your neighbours' grocery lists, love poems, and court orders. They'll call this the beginning, the dawn of history, the moment when humanity became civilized. But you know what they won't see: the calloused hands, the sleepless nights, the parasites in the water, the exhaustion that never leaves your bones. They won't feel the way the heat presses on your lungs, or the way fear coils in your stomach when thunder rolls and someone whispers that Marduk is angry again. They'll see progress. You'll remember pain. Still, part of you admires them, the Babylonians, who built something so vast it survived its own suffering. They learned to write, to build, to organize, to dream. They pulled order from chaos, meaning from mud. Even if it cost them comfort, even if it cost them peace. Maybe that's what civilization truly is. Not a gift, but a gamble. You turn one last time toward the city. The streets are alive with colour, now yellow grains spilling from baskets, red cloths hung to dry, silver pots catching light like mirrors. A vendor laughs as he haggles with a customer. A scribe waves you aside, muttering about wet footprints near his drying tablets. Life goes on, noisy and relentless, as it has for thousands of years. You take a slow breath. The air is already thickening with heat, and in that moment you realize humanity's greatness began here, not because it was easy, but because it wasn't, because people learned to survive, not despite the struggle, but through it. Babylon may have broken its citizens, but it also taught them how to build, and that lesson never died. As you turn toward the horizon, the sunlight catches the city's highest tower. It flares bright for a heartbeat, a gleam of gold in the dust. Then it fades. Civilization continues elsewhere, carried in stories, symbols, and scars. But Babylon, beautiful, brutal Babylon, still stands in your memory, humming quietly like a god that never sleeps. And you finally understand, comfort was never the goal, survival was. And somehow, against every scorching wind and sleepless night, humanity has never stopped trying. Now, the light fully breaks, flooding the world with heat and sound. It's morning again. The city stirs. The story continues.